people will say, good or bad, that you're like the next Van Damme, you know?
Yeah. There was a period in my career where I was starred in assassination games with Van Damme. I was in The Shepherd, and then I was in Expendables, and I did Universal Soldier. And I felt like it appeared like I was trying to ride on his coattails, which it wasn't, but obviously I was in a lot of films with him. So I can understand how it seemed that way. And when they said Hard Target 2, that was another reason why I didn't want to do it, because like, I can't keep just following Van Damme, living in his shadow.
Hey guys, in this video with Scott Adkins, we're going to talk about Jean-Claude Van Damme. Scott's going to share the first time he met Van Damme, the experience, etc., give his thoughts. Also, he was on Expendables 2 with Van Damme. Liam Hemsworth had claimed Van Damme kicked him full blast in the chest, so we're going to address that because Scott Adkins was literally right there with the two guys. So who better to ask? And then we're going to discuss the different styles of fight choreography, so you don't want to miss that. By the way, make sure to check out Scott Adkins' new movie, Accident Man Hitman's Holiday. It's really good. I highly recommend it. Make sure to check it out, but pay for it. Don't watch a pirated copy. Pay for it. You've got to support the action genre. Otherwise, we won't get more of these movies, and we want to get part 3. You want to see it, trust me, after you watch part 2. When you first met him, obviously, you grew up, you were a huge fan like many of us. Did it live up to your expectations? Like, how was it when you first met him?
I mean, it was crazy. I remember the first time I met him was in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica. And I was brought to meet him. I think he was trying to produce some stuff, and he had an idea for a kickboxer TV series. And so I went to meet him, and of course it was a massive moment for me. Whenever you meet the guys that you've grown up idolizing, like, you know, whether it was Jackie Chan or Donnie Yen or Jean-Claude Van Damme, Stallone, all those guys, it's a huge thing because you hold these guys in such high esteem as a kid that you never can get rid of that. And so it's amazing when you meet anyone like that. All those like wonderful experiences that they gave you as a kid watching their movies, it's all still there. So it was a big moment. And you know, he's a character, and he was a good laugh as well. And then he left like a message on my phone. He got my number, and I kept this message for ages, and he was saying, "Hey Scott, I got a great idea." I can't do the accent. Yeah, that was it. He came up with the idea to do the Kickboxer TV series, and for me to star in it. And it was probably just an idea he just had off the top of his head, and then forgot about it and left a message. I don't know. But I remember thinking, wow, that's amazing. He wants me to be in the Kickboxer TV series and things like that. Yeah, look, I've done quite a few films with him now. I know him. You know, we're not friends. I don't have his number. I don't text him. I don't keep in contact with him. But we've had enough experiences together making the movies that I will be thankful for. And, you know, he gave me a lot as a kid, as he did all of us. Inspired me to do what I do today. Inspired me to, you know, make my physique as good as I could make it, and to train as hard in martial arts. I loved those movies, and, you know, he's part of the reason that I do this today. And it is what it is, you know, that is the truth, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Yeah, and it's really cool that you're basically passing it on, because there's a lot of, you know, the next generation under us who are very inspired, obviously, by Boyka and a lot of the other stuff, because you've kind of taken like the martial arts on film to another level, because you really kind of popularized the whole tricking thing with the gymnastics and these crazy like 720s, taekwondo kicks and all that stuff, right? So you're, in a lot of ways, in a good way, the next Van Damme, in the sense that you inspire the next generation to take up martial arts, etc.
I hope I can be. I mean, look, Van Damme was a huge star, and I don't claim to be that. In my wildest dreams, that would have happened. But I'm doing my best to keep those movies alive. And, you know, I love my job, and I'm working very hard to keep it that way. But, yeah, I don't claim to be. He was 1 in a million, wasn't he? I mean, he's a good-looking guy, incredible physique, the best physique I've ever seen on a man. Let's be honest.
He's a beautiful man if you watch Bloodsport. I mean, that's
just, you watch that as a kid.
Good looking,
like, man, his physique's incredible. His arms is huge, and the martial arts and everything, you know, is like he had it all. He had the whole package. And those guys, they come around every so often. So you know,
all the right ingredients at the right time, like all the right ingredients at the right time. And let me ask you this, man, because I know Liam Hemsworth talks about this, and you were literally right there. Expendables 2, you held the knife like on his chest, and Van Damme kicked it. And then Liam's in interviews saying,
at one point in the scene, he has a moment where he supposedly kicks this knife into my chest. We did a bunch of takes, and on this one particular take, he gave me a full Van Damme kick to the chest.
I control everything perfect.
There was nothing controlled about it. You kicked me in the chest.
did he like hurt him or what?
I'm going to be honest. My memory's not very good. I don't remember him kicking him, but I do remember this. I'm holding the knife, but there's no blade because that's going to stick into him. So it's just the handle. And Van Damme kicks my hand and it goes into his chest. And he was kicking my hand pretty hard. Some of them I was like, but I was toughing it out. Don't worry.
They probably had to do a lot of takes.
But I'm fine with that, by the way. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, again,
I come from Hong Kong movies where that is acceptable behavior.
Okay. He didn't break your hand at least.
No.
Well, that's good. That's good. So you could take a lot more punishment than Liam Hemsworth, apparently.
Are you afraid of me? No, I'm not.
A few moments later.
I'm dying.
No, I don't remember him actually kicking him, but you know, I can't remember. I'm not going to comment. I'd love to talk about the differences between the Hong Kong cinema sort of style of action and the more realistic roadhouse action that you seem to prefer, and I'd just love to talk about that.
Yeah, of course, of course. I think the biggest issue I have from more of that Hong Kong style action is it just really looks like I'm watching two stunt performers / martial artists perform. Like, I don't really feel like I'm watching the characters when the fights go on like too long, right? It almost like desensitizes you. It's like, this guy took 50 kicks to the head. Like, why is he still standing at this point, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's different aspects to it, isn't there? There's the skill and the fancy kicks, which look amazing and are very cinematic, and obviously it would not work in reality, but it's cool when Tony Jaa does it. And Tony Jaa did it the best because he always landed those crazy gymnastics kicks full force on somebody's neck or on the top of their head or whatever, and you were like, well, that kind of doesn't work in real life, but he definitely hit him hard, so I'm buying it. But like, have you ever seen a Donnie Yen? Have you seen Flashpoint or Special ID or?
Not the whole movies, but I have watched those fight scenes, right? And again, like, as a martial artist myself, I do find it very impressive, especially.
No, but hang on a minute. In terms of like, you've got like the Yun Wu Ping Kung Fu movies and Snake and Eagle Shadow, which aren't very realistic, but I enjoy just the performance aspects of it. But then something like Flashpoint, which is Hong Kong cinema, martial arts fighting at its best, but it did it in a new way that was very realistic. What Donnie Yen accomplished with SPR before it and Flashpoint, Special ID, to me was incredible because it had that Hong Kong flair and the cinematography as well, but it was very realistic as well. Did you not think that?
I mean, there's more of that visceral, like hard hitting, bone crunching stuff. And I've noticed you do that in some of your films too. You know, I do like the more realistic action you've been putting out lately. Here's how I look at it, man. Like, sometimes it's almost too much where it becomes like a video game, right? And I always like to use the analogy. It's almost like bodybuilding in the sense where like these guys got so big, like the era of the mass monsters, it kind of took away. Like, it's impressive from a degree of how far can we push the human body? How many twists can a guy do before he kicks a guy in the head? But there's a certain aesthetic that kind of like, it's just overboard, you know? And again, this is like a taste thing. Again, as a martial artist and just seeing what the human body is capable of doing, you're like, that is pretty damn impressive. but it takes me out of the movie a little bit, because again, I look at movies that, regardless of the genre, a martial arts film is still a film. So I'm always about like the character, and I need a certain sense of like realism.
What about the Jackie Chan films? You don't like the Jackie Chan films?
I do and I don't. I know they're just supposed to be goofy and funny and slapsticky, so it's like, I'm not really into like this is a real character that I care about, like Lionheart. So it's okay because it's just Jackie Chan goofing around, hitting people with refrigerator doors,
Well, that's interesting, you see, because Jackie Chan, he does make those goofy kung fu caper comedy type things. So the style of action works within that, right? Mm-hmm. But obviously, if it was Lionheart, and then everyone started fighting like in a Jackie Chan movie, you'd be like, what's going on here? This doesn't make sense, right? This is shit. So it's important that the action fits the tone of the movie. So Accident Man, for instance, is over the top crazy. So we're completely legitimate to have these Hong Kong style martial arts fight sequences. In fact, if it was any different, it probably wouldn't work as good. It's better that it's that way because it's an over-the-top film. But when you look at Avengement or One Shot or Debt Collector, which is more like Lionheart, we've tapered the fighting to fit that tone of the movie, which is more serious, more realistic. I think it's those films that don't understand the tone when it comes to the action, and it shifts to something else where it really stands out like a sore thumb, So it's important to know what the tone of film is. So for me, I've done all of them, and I appreciate the Jackie Chan stuff, the Donnie Yen stuff, especially the Jet Li stuff. And I love like Patrick Swayze. Roadhouse is just an amazing film to me, and the Van Damme stuff back in the beginning. Although he did do too much of the triple cutting or whatever it is, that got a bit annoying. In Lionheart, it was certainly done over the top, but there you go.
My only criticism is, as much as I like Avengement and the character, and I love the fighting in there, it's so brutal and visceral, and like I buy the elbows, the punches, the headbutts, the knees, thrust kicks even. I just can't picture that guy doing your beautiful wheel kicks. I'm like, nah, I don't think he should be doing that.
So when I was with the Riot Police, I did a spin kick, into the helmet. I just couldn't resist.
I figured like this is probably, he has to throw him. He probably doesn't even like think about it. It's just so natural. But that's the only thing that took me out of the character just a little bit, because again, the performance is like, and even the way you look, it's like you're not really watching Scott Adkins. You're really just watching this guy that was a naive young man, and he ended up transforming into like just some vicious killer, so intense. But then like, and the fights are so good. But then when you're doing like, again, the beautiful kicks, I'm like, okay, now I'm watching Scott Adkins very briefly.
I shouldn't have done the spinning kick, but I was getting nervous that my fans would expect it. But there you go.
But that's another thing I was going to ask, Scott. Do you feel a certain pressure? It's almost like if Van Damme were to do a romantic comedy back in the day, someone would probably still want to see him. The fans would still, can you at least spin kick one guy in the head?
Yeah, no, for sure. They expect it, and for the most part, I plan to keep them entertained. I'd try different things. Sometimes it'd just be a straight acting role, but for the most part, I remember Jeff Speakman coming out with The Perfect Weapon, and I absolutely loved that film and loved Jeff. But then he started doing less and less martial arts in his movies, and I remember thinking, this isn't good. I want to see Speakman kicking some ass, man. And so I will never let my audience down. And unless it's film where I'm a supporting part or something, you can pretty much guarantee that if I'm the lead, it's going to have some great action sequences. And that is my pledge to my audience.